So think about this for a second. If you were training for like a marathon, you wouldn't just wake up one morning, throw on some shoes, and head out the door.
Right, no, that would be a disaster.
Exactly. You'd spend months preparing. You'd track every macronutrient, dial in your hydration, and really treat your body like this high performance engine that needs very specific fuel to handle an extreme physical demand.
Oh, absolutely.
But what if you weren't just running a race? What if you were building an entirely new central nervous system from scratch?
Yeah, that's a whole different level of metabolic stress.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking specifically at Kelly Ellington's clinical text on maternal nutrition to answer exactly that question.
And it is a fascinating text.
It totally is. Our mission today is to strip away the old wives' tales, decode the actual science of what a pregnant body demands, and just uncover the mind-blowing physiological marathon a body endures over those 9 months.
Because it really is a marathon.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this because whether you're planning a family, supporting a partner, or honestly, if you're just fascinated by the sheer limits of human biology, this text completely rewrites how you view nutrition.
It does. I mean, we aren't just talking about a woman gaining some weight here.
Not at all.
The baseline reality that Ellington establishes right at the start, it shifts the entire timeline. Like maternal nutrition isn't confined to a neat little 9-month window.
Right.
It starts way before conception. The nutritional status of a woman going into pregnancy essentially lays this huge physiological foundation. Yeah. And that dictates not just the immediate development of the fetus, but the long-term health of that child.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, we're talking about their risk for chronic diseases well into adulthood.
That is just wild. The idea that, like, the meals you eat today could actually impact a child's cardiovascular health decades from now.
Exactly. It's profound.
So let's start right at the beginning, in that preconception window, before someone even realizes they are, missing a period.
The invisible phase, yeah.
Right. The text makes a massive point about folate or folic acid being this absolute non-negotiable starting point.
Yeah, so folate is vitamin B9. And the synthetic version we find in supplements, that's folic acid.
Okay.
The biological urgency here really comes down to the sheer speed of early embryonic development. I mean, within the very first month of gestation.
Which is when, exactly.
Usually between days 21 and 28, which is when a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant yet.
Wow, right.
Right, so during that tiny window, a flat layer of cells in the embryo literally folds over to form a tube. That's the neural tube. And that structure eventually becomes the baby's entire brain and spinal cord.
Just in those first few weeks.
Exactly. And folate is the essential catalyst for the DNA synthesis required to build those cells that rapidly.
So wait, if there isn't enough folate circulating in the mother's blood, what happens? That tube it doesn't close properly.
Yeah, unfortunately. The cells simply cannot replicate fast enough to seal the structure.
Oh, man.
And a failure in the closure of that neural tube results in severe, often really devastating defects. Things like spina bifida, where the spinal cord is actually exposed, or anencephaly, where major parts of the brain just fail to develop.
That is terrifying.
It is. The clinical evidence is so overwhelming here that the universal recommendation is for all adolescents and women capable of becoming pregnant to consume 400 micrograms of folic acid every single day.
Just to maintain that baseline defense.
Exactly, just as a baseline.
But, and this caught my eye in the text, there's a scenario where that number jumps exponentially. Like if a woman has a history of a pregnancy with a neural tube defect, the recommendation goes from 400 micrograms to 4 milligrams daily.
Right. A huge jump.
Yeah. Let me push back on this for a second because that is a massive tenfold increase. Why such a drastic jump? Is the body just suddenly terrible at absorbing it or what?
Well, it actually often comes down to genetic variations. It's about how a specific woman's body metabolizes folate.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so some individuals have an enzyme deficiency. It's often related to the NTHFR gene.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's getting more attention lately. But that mutation makes it incredibly difficult for their bodies to convert standard folate into the active form the cells can actually use.
So the normal dose just passes right through.
Pretty much. For those women, the baseline 400 micrograms barely moves the needle. They need that massive 4 milligram saturation starting at least a month before trying to conceive.
Wow.
They essentially have to brute force enough active folate into the system to guarantee that neural tube closes.
Okay, so if the embryo is doing all of this crucial, heavy-lifting organ development in the first trimester, literally building a spinal cord and brain from scratch, I have a major question about calories.
I think I know where this is going.
Because we've all heard the phrase, eating for two.
Oh, yeah.
If the body's doing all this complex manufacturing, shouldn't she need a massive increase in fuel right away? I mean, it sounds exhausting.
You would think so. But that eating for two concept is perhaps the most pervasive myth in maternal nutrition.
Really?
Yeah. During the first trimester, a woman of normal pre-pregnancy weight needs 0 extra calories.
0.
0. The energetic demand simply isn't there yet. I mean, the real caloric ramp-up happens much later. It's an extra 340 kilocalories a day in the second trimester, and then 452 extra kilocalories a day in the third.
Okay, so I like to think of it like a major construction project.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, in that first trimester, you're essentially just drawing the complex blueprints,
Yeah.
right? And maybe carefully laying down the intricate electrical wiring. That's the cellular differentiation and organ development.
Right.
You don't need a massive influx of heavy building materials or extra fuel to just draw a blueprint. But in the second and third trimesters, that's when you are actually pouring the concrete, framing the walls, putting on the roof.
Yes. That's the rapid fetal mass growth.
Right, and that's when you actually need those extra 400 calories to physically build the tissue.
That is a perfect analogy.
Sure.
The first trimester is entirely about complexity, while the second and third are about sheer volume.
Volume, yeah.
And when we analyze the anatomy of the weight a woman gains, the distribution of those calories becomes very clear. I mean, the clinical recommendation for a woman of normal weight is to gain between 25 and 35 pounds over the entire pregnancy.
Right. And breaking down that 30-ish pounds is so fascinating to me because it completely reframes how you look at the pregnant body.
It really does.
Like, the fetus itself only accounts for about 7 to 8.5 pounds at birth.
Which isn't that much of the total.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The placenta and the amniotic fluid make up another 4.5 pounds combined. And then the body lays down about 4 to 6 pounds of fat stores, specifically to prep the body for the massive energy drain of breastfeeding later on.
Nature's energy reserve.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. You look at the hidden physiological infrastructure.
Well, the cardiovascular expansion is phenomenal.
Huge.
The text notes that total blood volume, meaning the plasma fluid and the red blood cells, that increases by 40 to 50% during pregnancy.
Half again as much blood.
Exactly. The mother manufactures 4 to 5 pounds of just extra fluid and blood to support the uterine placental unit. She is literally walking around with 50% more blood in her veins.
Which explains so much about the physical exhaustion. I mean, your heart is suddenly pumping a massive surplus of fluid.
It's working overtime constantly.
And assuming you know your starting BMI, this shifting infrastructure explains why the weight gain targets aren't just a flat number for everyone, right?
Exactly. The starting point dictates the physiological runway the body needs.
Okay, makes sense.
So, an underweight woman doesn't have the baseline fat or nutrient stores to support that massive cardiovascular expansion, let alone the fetal growth. She's advised to gain more between 28 and 40 pounds.
And if she doesn't?
Without that extra gain, she faces a really high risk of preterm labor or intrauterine growth restriction. That happens when the placenta is essentially starved of nutrients and just can't deliver enough to the fetus, resulting in a dangerously small infant.
Wow. And conversely, the text clinically advises a woman who is obese to gain much less, right? Only 11 to 20 pounds.
Correct.
I imagine that's because excessive weight gain on top of a high starting BMI just overloads an already taxed metabolic system.
That's exactly it. The complications cascade very quickly. The text outlines severe risks associated with excessive weight gain. Gestational diabetes driven by intense insulin resistance, dangerous hypertensive disorders like preeclampsia,
Which is really scary.
very scary, and a much higher likelihood of requiring a cesarean birth, which then carries an elevated risk for postpartum surgical site infections due to the excess adipose tissue.
Right, because surgery is just riskier.
Exactly. The body just needs a very precise equilibrium.
Speaking of maintaining equilibrium, the text highlights a major medical paradigm shift regarding sodium that totally blew my mind.
Oh, the salt debate.
Yeah. For decades, the standard advice was to banish the salt shaker entirely. Doctors told pregnant women to drastically restrict their salt intake to stop their ankles from swelling up like balloons.
Right. The classic attempt to banish peripheral edema.
Yeah.
The old logic was simple. Salt retains water. Pregnant women are retaining too much water in their tissues, therefore cut the salt.
Makes logical sense on the surface.
On the surface, sure. But modern clinical understanding reveals that moderate swelling in the extremities is actually a completely normal, necessary physiological response.
It's driven by the hormones, isn't it? Like estrogen levels are just skyrocketing.
Spot on. Estrogen causes systemic vasodilation. That's the relaxing and widening of the blood vessels.
Yeah.
And it promotes fluid retention.
Right, to hold all that extra blood.
Exactly. Remember that massive 50% increase in blood volume we just discussed. The body's total water is expanding rapidly. Sodium is an essential osmolyte.
Meaning what exactly?
It means it maintains the osmotic pressure that holds that water inside the vascular space where it actually belongs.
Oh, okay.
So if you severely restrict sodium, the water can seep out of the blood vessels and into the surrounding tissues even faster. You end up crashing the very system you need to keep the placenta perfused.
So cutting salt makes the swelling worse.
It can,
Yeah.
yeah. Plus, extreme sodium restriction makes it incredibly difficult to consume an adequate, balanced diet. Food just tastes terrible, and you need those calories.
Okay, so we've got this massive shifting infrastructure, gallons of extra fluid, targeted fat stores, a brand new organ in the placenta. Let's zoom in on the specific chemical elements the body needs to build all of this.
Micronutrients.
Right. Because navigating the micronutrients during pregnancy sounds less like eating a balanced meal and more like a chemistry experiment.
It really is a balancing act.
Let's talk about the iron paradox.
Iron. It presents a very unique metabolic hurdle. A pregnant woman needs 27 milligrams of iron daily. She needs it to transfer directly to the fetus for its own blood supply, and she needs it to synthesize hemoglobin for all those extra red blood cells she's churning out.
So she needs a lot.
She does. But the complication is the molecular reality of iron absorption in the human gut. It is incredibly finicky.
Finicky is a good word for it, because you can't just swallow a prenatal pill and assume your body absorbs the 27 milligrams.
Not at all.
The text points out that the environment in your stomach dictates everything. Like, if you take your iron supplement with a glass of orange juice, the vitamin C acts as an enhancer, right? It dramatically boosts how much iron passes through the intestinal wall.
Yes, vitamin C is your best friend there.
Mm.
But the blockers are literally everywhere.
What blocks it?
Well, if you take that same iron supplement with a glass of milk, a cup of tea, or even your morning coffee, you've essentially flushed it away.
They're kidding.
Nope. The calcium in dairy products and the tannins in tea and coffee, they physically bind to the iron molecules in the digestive tract. They create this chemical complex that is simply too large to cross the intestinal membrane into the bloodstream.
That is wild. And it's not just dairy or caffeine. The text specifically calls out spinach and Swiss chard.
Yes, the leafy greens.
They contain oxalates, which also bind to the iron. So the classic imagery of, eating a massive spinach salad to get your iron, you might actually be sabotaging your expensive prenatal supplement if you consume them together.
It's true. The timing and combinations are everything.
Jeez.
And while we are navigating these chemical minefields, the text issues a really loud, urgent warning about fat-soluble vitamins, too.
Right. Vitamins A, D, E, and K.
Exactly.
With water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C or the B vitamins, your body just takes what it needs and you pee out the excess, right? So I'm guessing the real danger zone is these fat-soluble ones. Like, how easy is it to actually overdo it?
It is remarkably easy if someone is, say, doubling up on supplements without clinical guidance.
Like taking a prenatal and a multivitamin.
Exactly. Fat-soluble vitamins do not leave the body easily. They are stored in the liver and the fatty tissues. If you take too much, they accumulate. And they can reach highly toxic levels that actually interfere with embryonic development.
Oh, wow.
Vitamin A is the major red flag here. In excessive doses, it acts as a teratogen.
What does that mean, a teratogen?
It's an agent that directly disrupts the cellular signaling pathways in the embryo, causing severe malformations.
The text mentions congenital malformations of the heart, lungs, skull, and eyes. That is terrifying.
It is. And this is the exact mechanism behind the strict, universal medical warning against isotretinoin.
Right, which most people know as the acne medication Accutane.
Yes, it is a synthetic vitamin A analog. If a pregnant woman takes it, the risk for severe facial abnormalities, hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain, and profound central nervous system damage in the infant is extraordinarily high.
It really emphasizes why you can't just browse the supplement aisle and guess. You really need professional guidance.
100%.
But, if a severe deficiency can cause the body's natural systems to fail, it makes you wonder what happens when the body's craving system goes completely rogue trying to fix a deficiency.
Ah, yes.
Because the text transitions into one of the most bizarre phenomena I've ever read about. Pica.
Pica is fascinating and very serious. It's the intense, persistent craving and consumption of non-food substances.
Right, and we aren't talking about the cliche of craving pickles and ice cream at 2 a.m.
No, not at all.
The text details women compulsively eating clay, soil, laundry starch, baby powder, chalk, and even massive amounts of freezer frost.
Yeah, the ice chewing is very common.
What is the biological mechanism there? Like, why would a human brain look at a box of laundry starch and signal the stomach that it's a food source?
The precise neurological pathway is still being studied, actually. But clinically, pica is almost inextricably linked to severe iron deficiency anemia.
So it's an iron thing again.
Exactly. The current physiological hypothesis is that the brain's craving center senses a desperate lack of a vital mineral. And in response, the olfactory and gustatory systems they misfire.
Like a glitch.
Yeah, they revert to a flawed primal instinct to seek out earth minerals in the environment. It drives the woman to consume dirt or clay to extract iron, even though the human gut can't effectively absorb iron from those sources.
The hidden dangers there are just terrifying. The text specifically mentions the consumption of tierra among some populations, which involves eating soil or pulverized pottery.
Yes, and the primary danger isn't just displacing nutritious food, it is toxic contamination.
From the soil.
Right. Lead from environmental soils or the glazes of that pottery can easily cross the placental barrier. That causes irreversible neurological damage and lead poisoning in the fetus.
Oh my God.
Furthermore, eating raw clay introduces a really high risk of parasitic infections. This is why obstetricians are trained to screen for pica at every trimester.
They actually ask about it.
They do, in a very compassionate, non-judgmental way, because it's essentially a cry for help from the mother's metabolism.
Wow. So if a biological misfire can drive someone to eat clay, how does this delicate system handle our very intentional modern dietary choices?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because the modern food environment is vastly different from even 50 years ago. I'm looking at things like veganism, the gluten-free trend, or surgical interventions.
Yeah, specialized diets basically strip away traditional safety nets. Take strict veganism, for example. The text notes that women adhering to plant-based diets require rigorous monitoring for vitamin B12, iron, and zinc.
Because they aren't eating meat.
Right. B12, for instance, is naturally found almost exclusively in animal products, and it is absolutely vital for the neurological development of the fetus.
What about the massive trend of going gluten-free? I mean, unless you have celiac disease, is that safe during pregnancy?
It can be highly problematic if it's not managed with a dietitian.
Really? Why?
Well, standard commercial grains and breads are heavily fortified by law with folic acid, thiamine, and niacin.
Oh, to prevent the neural tube defects we talked about?
Exactly. But many gluten-free alternatives are not fortified. So a woman substituting her grains might inadvertently create a severe folate deficiency right at the exact moment her embryo needs it to close that neural tube.
That is such a huge hidden risk.
It really is.
The text also brings up bariatric surgery, like a gastric bypass, which makes perfect sense when you think about the mechanics, right? If you've surgically altered your stomach and intestines to absorb fewer calories so you can lose weight, you're also fundamentally absorbing fewer nutrients.
Yes, bariatric procedures intentionally bypass the duodenum and parts of the intestine where the majority of iron, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed into the blood.
So how do they handle pregnancy?
The clinical mandate is that women who have undergone bariatric surgery require intense nutritional screening and heavy specialized supplementation for 3 to 6 months before they even attempt to conceive.
Wow, they have to prep that far in advance.
They have to. You have to optimize their baseline because their digestive tract is physically incapable of extracting what a fetus needs from a standard diet.
Okay, there was another physiological conflict in the text that fascinated me, highlighting a different kind of modern reality: adolescent pregnancies. The text refers to it as the competition for nutrients.
Yes, it's a harsh biological tug of war.
Tug of war is a good way to put it.
When a 15-year-old becomes pregnant, her own body hasn't finished its growth cycle. Her epiphyseal plates, those are the growth areas at the ends of her bones, they are still open.
Right, she's still growing taller.
Exactly. Her skeleton is aggressively pulling calcium and protein from her bloodstream to build her own bone density.
So you have a mother whose skeleton is actively demanding calcium, and a fetus whose rapidly forming skeleton is also actively demanding calcium.
And they are literally fighting over the exact same circulating mineral pool.
Who wins?
In this competition, the mother's body often prioritizes the fetus. It draws calcium out of her own newly formed bones, which leaves her at risk for long-term osteopenia.
Wow.
And simultaneously, the fetus might still not get enough to thrive, leading to growth restriction. It's a profound systemic stress test for both of them.
Okay, let's shift from internal biological competition to external invisible threats. Let's talk about food safety. Because pregnancy fundamentally alters the mother's immune system, doesn't it?
It has to, yeah.
Because of the baby.
Right, the fetus carries paternal DNA, meaning half of its genetic material is completely foreign to the mother's body.
Oh, like an organ transplant.
Very similar.
Yeah.
To prevent her white blood cells from identifying the fetus as an invader and attacking it, her immune system naturally suppresses itself.
Which is an incredible evolutionary workaround. But I imagine it leaves the door wide open for foodborne illnesses. Like a pathogen that might just give you or me a mild stomachache for a day can suddenly bypass her defenses entirely.
Exactly. And the big villain the text warns about is listeria.
Listeria.
Listeria monocytogenes is uniquely dangerous because it has the ability to cross the placental barrier and directly infect the fetus.
That's awful.
An infection can rapidly lead to miscarriage, severe preterm birth, or stillbirth. This is the exact physiological mechanism behind the ban on unpasteurized milk and soft cheeses like brie, camembert, and queso fresco.
It's also why deli meats, hot dogs, and bologna are on the ban list, right? Unless you heat them until they are literally steaming hot.
Yes, the heat physically destroys the bacterial cell walls. You just cannot take the risk with a cold turkey sandwich.
But the food advice that always seems to paralyze people is about seafood. It is the ultimate catch-22.
Oh, the seafood paradox.
Yeah, the text says you absolutely must eat fish, but also be terrified of fish. What is the deal there?
Let's untangle it. On one side of the equation, the fetus desperately needs long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, specifically omega-3s like DHA.
Right, for brain development.
Yes, DHA is a primary structural component of the human brain and retina, and the fetus cannot synthesize enough of it alone. So to supply that DHA, the clinical recommendation is 8 to 12 ounces of seafood a week.
But on the other side of the equation is the methylmercury warning.
Right. Methylmercury is an industrial pollutant that accumulates in the ocean, and it is a severe neurotoxin to a developing fetal brain.
So how do you balance that?
The key is understanding bioaccumulation in the food chain. You must avoid the large, long-living apex predators of the ocean. Things like shark, swordfish, king mackerel, tilefish.
Because they've eaten all the smaller fish.
Exactly. They have spent years eating smaller fish, accumulating massive doses of mercury in their tissue.
Got it.
So to get the crucial DHA without the neurotoxin, the text advises eating smaller, shorter-lived species lower on the food chain. Salmon, sardines, shrimp, catfish, or canned light tuna.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So bringing this all back to you, the listener, what does this mountain of clinical data actually mean? We started this deep dive talking about preparing for a marathon,
Right.
but looking back at the sheer scale of what Kelly Ellington's text lays out, I mean, a marathon feels like an understatement. We are talking about a body that can increase its cardiovascular fluid by half.
It's incredible.
A body that selectively absorbs specific micronutrients while its immune system carefully stands down. A body that completely rewires its metabolic rate to construct a central nervous system out of thin air.
It is the ultimate adaptive system.
Okay.
But, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that pushes past the immediate biology of just those 9 months.
Okay, lay it on us.
We've talked extensively about how nutrition builds the physical structures of a baby. But emerging epigenetic science suggests it goes much deeper than that.
And so,
What if the specific meals eaten during pregnancy, the precise ratios of micro and macronutrients absorbed, don't just build the tissue, but literally program the metabolic thermostat of the next generation?
wait, really?
Yes. When you view maternal nutrition through that lens, a pregnant woman isn't just feeding a baby today. She is actively programming the DNA expression that might dictate the obesity or diabetes risk of her grandchildren in the future.
Her grandchildren.
Yes. Think about the profound weight of that next time you look at a plate of food.
Wow. Programming the metabolic thermostat for generations to come. That entirely redefines the marathon, doesn't it? Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary hidden science of the human body. Keep asking questions, keep looking past the surface, and stay curious.